How's it going, everyone? This video is going to be explaining the rules of Baldur's Gate 3, which is based on the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons rules. I've been requested to make a video explaining the rules of Baldur's Gate 3, and this is the first one explaining the very basics. If people like it, if there's requests to keep going, then I'll keep going and make videos going into the details. So, Baldur's Gate 3 is a dice rolling game, as is Dungeons & Dragons. Anything your character tries to do is determined by a dice roll, specifically a 20-sided dice. Something difficult might require you to roll a 16 or higher. Something easier might require you to roll a 10 or higher. And something very easy might require a 5 or higher, and so on. Now, how the dice lands, that's not the final number, because a bonus is added to that number, and what that bonus is, well, that depends on the character's choices, the player's choices. So we're going to get into that. Now, whatever character you create, or maybe you're going to use one of the existing characters in the story, the most important thing about that character is their abilities. If you go to the character creation screen and you pick a custom character, there's all these options on the top left of the screen. And we're going to go jump right down to abilities, because that's the most important thing to understand. Now, someone who knows the rules of Dungeons & Dragons can pick up Baldur's Gate 3 and they already understand all of this. Now, if you don't know the rules of Dungeons & Dragons, well, you can still enjoy Baldur's Gate 3 without understanding it. But you'll be understanding the rules on a qualitative level and not exactly quantitatively. For example, let's say you're picking your race and you go with human, and you see, oh, what are the race features of a human? And you see, oh, they have weapons proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives. And you think, okay, so I guess humans are just better at using those particular kinds of weapons. And that's true. But what does that actually mean mathematically? How does that affect the dice roll? That's what I'm going to explain here. So, anything you try to do in the game boils down to one of these 6 abilities. Okay? Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Strength is exactly what it sounds like. Anything that requires muscle mass to perform, that counts as something to do with strength, a strength check or a strength save. Dexterity is doing something with your body that's not muscle related, essentially, in this game. So this is hand-eye coordination, this is balance, this is flexibility. Yeah, it's kind of muscle related, but not as directly. So that all falls under the category of dexterity. Constitution is how tough you are, how healthy you are. How can you withstand a unhealthy situation? Maybe a poison, or how much damage can you take before losing consciousness? Intelligence is your analysis ability, essentially. It's how much can you memorize? How well are you at recalling information? How much details will you notice when you're focusing and investigating something? And that kind of book smarts. That's what intelligence is, right? How much have you learned about the world in that sense? Wisdom, it's more like street smarts, intuition. How much do you understand and pay attention to your senses, your willpower? One joke said about intelligence and wisdom is intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, whereas wisdom is knowing not to put it into a fruit salad. And charisma is your personality skills. How well are you at getting along with people, understanding people, convincing people of certain things, or intimidating people, right? All these sort of people skills fall under the category of charisma. So what do these numbers mean? Okay, when you're creating a character, and as the game progresses, you can affect these numbers. Okay? So these numbers affect what is added to your dice roll. So what you do is, let's say we take dexterity. Okay? whatever your ability score is, you're going to subtract 10, then divide the result by 2 and round down. So for example, dexterity, we have 17 for this character. Okay, if we subtract 10, we get 7, and if we divide by 2 rounding down, we get 3. So whenever this character tries to do something that has to do with dexterity, a 3 is added to their dice roll. So let's say they roll a 20-sided dice and it lands on 15. Well, a 3 is added to that, so that actually counts as rolling an 18. Okay? So that's pretty good, right? Now you could have a negative score. So this character, for example, their strength is 8. Well, again, the rule is always minus 10, then divide by 2 rounding down. So 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Divide by 10 is negative 1. So if they try to do something with strength, well, then 1 is subtracted from their roll. Let's say they roll a 5. Well, 1 is subtracted from that, so that actually counts as a roll of 4. Okay, now when you're creating your character, you can clear all these options, and you can clear these bonuses here, and then you have 8 everywhere. You can't have a less than 8. And you have these 27 points available, and you can create whatever character you want, right? Maybe you want a character that's very dexterous and pretty strong, not very tough, pretty intelligent but not very wise, and they have maybe average people skills. Right now we have some more points to work with here, so let's say we add to strength and we add to constitution, right? So you can create whatever character you want. Maybe you want your character to be weaker but have a lot of wisdom, okay, although not very intelligent, right? Maybe you want them to have lots of people skills. It's really up to you how you create your character. Now, if you want to have more than 13 points in a certain ability, then from this pool of ability points that you have, it's actually going to cost you 2 points to go from 13 to 14. Okay, and it's going to cost you another 2 points to go from 14 to 15. Okay, just something to keep in mind. And then you have these 2 abilities, one of which you can assign +2 to, and one of which you can assign +1 to. And the default for that will depend on the class that you pick. I'm not going to get into class in this video. Essentially, you get to select these numbers, or you can just use the recommended. And your selection is going to affect what bonus you get when you roll the dice. And that bonus, it's always whatever the ability score is, subtract 10, and then divide the result by 2, rounding down. Now, if we hover over some of these, okay, so we see that 3 right here. The calculation is done for us, all right? And then below here, it actually says +5, right, to a saving throw, okay? So where does this +5 come from, and what is a saving throw? So ability checks is when you try to do something, right? So strength check would be trying to push something out of the way. A dexterity check would be trying to, say, walk a tightrope. Okay, a intelligence check would be trying to understand what's written in maybe a language that you half understand, or something written in code. Okay, these are all things that your character is doing. A save is your character trying to withstand or avoid something being done to them. Okay, so having to jump out of the way when something dangerous is happening, that would be a dexterity save rather than a dexterity check. Okay, trying to figure out whether someone is lying to you, that would be a wisdom save rather than trying to lie to someone in a convincing way, which would be a charisma check. Okay, so a check is something your character is doing, a save is something being done to your character and you trying to withstand that. Okay. Now, for most of these, you'll see the number for the save is the same as for the check, okay? But for some of them, it's not the same, okay? So like dexterity here, right? There's a +5 to the save rather than the +3, which we would get from just 17 minus 10 divided by 2 rounding down, right? Why is it a +5? Well, there's that +3 there for dexterity, but then there's another +2 for something called proficiency. Okay, Now if you look at the top here, there's proficiency bonus, and see it says +2. Proficiency is something that your character is exceptionally good at, right? These ability scores, that's just who they are in terms of their raw abilities without focusing so much on training in specific areas, right? How strong are they? How dexterous are they? How intelligent? How wise? Proficiency represents something that you're trained in, and for that you get a +2. So for example, when you're selecting a character's race, something here that says you have weapons proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, it means when a character uses those specific weapons, they get an additional +2 to their dice, right? So let's say they want to attack with a spear. Okay, if they didn't have that proficiency, well, they would just get their strength bonus, which is actually a -1. So they would roll a 20-sided dice and subtract 1 from whatever they're rolling. But because they're proficient with it, they get that +2. So there's the -1, but then +2, which is actually +1. So they would roll the dice and add 1 to their dice roll. Okay? Now, you could be proficient with weapons, right? You could be proficient with many other things, and these are called skills. Okay? So there's a whole lot of skills that you can choose from, and if you possess a skill, right, if you're proficient with a skill, you add that skill bonus. So if we take this character here, for example, they're not athletic. Okay, now if you hover over athletics, and notice it says strength here. Athletics is a strength-based skill. So if they try to do something athletic, they're just adding their strength modifier, which happens to be a -1. So they're subtracting 1. Okay? Now, if you take stealth, for example, well, they have proficiency with it, right? So it's not just their dexterity modifier that's added to it, which is a +3, but more is added to it, okay? Their proficiency is added to it. Where was it? Stealth, right here, right? So +3 plus another 2 for proficiency, so that makes +5, right? So see, it says here, skills with proficiency and skills with expertise. Now this particular character can actually double their proficiency bonus, right, with something called expertise, and so they get, instead of a +2, they get a +4, right? So they have the +3 +4, that gives them their +7. Okay, let's take something like survival. Okay, so perception is a wisdom-based skill, and they have +1 to perception. Okay, where does that +1 come from? Well, that just comes from their wisdom, right? +1 to all wisdom checks. But survival is a skill they actually possess. So not only do they have the +1, they also have that +2 proficiency bonus, which boosts survival up to a +3. Okay? Keeping in mind it's a wisdom-based skill, that's why there's that +1 there. And then another 2 proficiency bonus, which gives you the +3. Okay? Now, this proficiency bonus, it starts off as +2, but as the game progresses, it can actually increase and become as high as a +6. So, that is ability scores, what they mean, how they affect the dice rolls. Okay, while playing Baldur's Gate 3, sometimes you'll see the dice rolling. You can actually click on the dice and see those bonuses added. Other times, you don't see the dice roll, right? Your character shoots an arrow, and the arrow hits or misses. No dice roll shown, but that dice is rolling in the background. And that's how ability scores and proficiency affect that. So, that's enough for the basics of Baldur's Gate 3 and or 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It's all based on that rolling of the 20-sided dice. Now, if people enjoy this, if people request that I keep going with this, then we'll start getting into the details of what are the benefits of selecting the different races, and what are the different classes, what do they mean, the different backgrounds, and all of that. We'll get into more details. So, if people enjoy it, we'll do that. So, I hope you enjoy it, and until next time.